Welcome. Welcome, everyone. We are here in live with Marcy and Amy, the heart-centered woman. And we have a bit of an unusual program today because our dear Amy Shade, women's empowerment coach extraordinaire, unfortunately is not able to participate. She has some issues with her voice and she's not feeling well. So we're going to do our best to get through the program without her input. But Amy and I have been working together for such a long time. I think in some cases I can speak for her, and certainly we'll try to convey her perspectives. But for now, we ask that everybody please introduce yourselves in the chat. And while everyone's introducing themselves in the chat, letting us know where you're from, I would like to, of course, officially welcome everyone to Live with Marcy and Amy, the heart-centered woman. Today we have a wonderful program for you, the divine feminine warrior in life. And I don't know about you, but right away I start to get images of that divine warrior. And we're talking about the unshakable courage in times of uncertainty, to hold steadfast and empowered. And so with that, I'd like to also welcome our guests. And for anyone who didn't hear the beginning of the program, Amy will not be able to participate today. She's not really feeling up to it, but we're going to do our best to carry on. And with that, I would like to introduce you to Linda Kroll. Linda, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here?
Well, thank you. I'm here because you invited me, and every time you invite me, something magical happens, because I try to get out of my head and into my heart. I'm seeing some very dear faces in the crowd who are here today, and there'll be others listening. And I'm just always moved about the amount of spiritual wisdom that come when women get together. And in what I do professionally and personally, whatever I can share, I'm grateful to be here. And I know it's going to be a co-creation of all of us.
That's right. It certainly will be.
So I'll give you a little details later, but I know Kenlyn and I have some similarities. You're a lawyer too, I think, who has become a spiritual leader, and you created the Evolving Sisters Network. So please tell us a little bit about you and who you are.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks, Marcy and Amy. I'm super glad to be here. Yeah, I was an attorney. Oh my goddess. Sounds like so many moons ago. And so many iterations. I call myself a lawyer turned mystic. And I probably always had the mystic heart. But you know what happens when the goddess taps you on the shoulder and says, it's time. And all the things that you've ever done before are woven into a purpose that starts to make sense and unfold. So a few years ago, I started the Divine Feminine Summit, and now it's going to be called the Evolutionary Feminine Leadership Summit. So I think that's why I got invited here, because this is a really important conversation for our spiritual awakening as the patriarchal structures are crumbling and the world is starving for the nourishment of the divine feminine. So I'll leave it there and say thank you, Marcy.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for being here. I just want to remind everyone that if your cameras are on, that you are, of course, being recorded, and this recording will be shared with hundreds of women around the world. So if that's not your intention, please remember to turn both your microphone and your camera off. But having said that, so I'm Marcy Newman, the other part of Live with Marcy and Amy. And I'm known as the Heart Shift Coach. And I come to you actually with 50 years of experience and having worked with women all around the world, helping them to heal their hearts. And it's actually quite incredible for me to think of that and how my work has evolved. But you'll hear more about that a little bit later on. I just want you to know, of course, that this work, as both Linda and Kenlin's described for you, is so important. This is a time of now for us, and that's why Amy and I really chose this topic. We wanted to jump into this theme, and of course, to give all of you here in the program the support that it takes, and also some guidance and inspiration to create the changes in your lives that you're being called to make. And so with that, I'd like to start the program off with sharing a quote with you. And that is, and by the way, this is anonymous. I'm not certain where it came from, but nobody is born a warrior. You choose to be one when you refuse to be seated. You choose to be one when you refuse to back down. You choose to be one when you stand up after getting knocked down. And you choose to be one because if not you, who? And that is really the question for the day. So with that, I'd like to begin our discussion today by coming to you, Linda. Now, Linda, you have had this incredible career as a therapist, a mediator, an attorney, an author, a meditation and yoga instructor. And now you're focusing your heart and purpose into teaching compassionate communication skills and mediation. You clearly are the epitome of a divine feminine warrior, and our audience will hear more about that. But what does it mean to you to be a divine feminine warrior? And what are some of the qualities that you believe she possesses?
Thanks, Amy, for that great question. So when I think of a divine feminine warrior, at first I tried to chat GPT qualities, but I realized, no, we know what they are. And I went into the idea of that we're all Wonder Women. We all can deflect bullets. We all can work from speed. She's also all about strength, but our strength comes from gentleness. Our courage comes from love. And we fight when we need to, but we seek peace in all the different areas. So I was thinking of Wonder Woman, but then I was actually thinking of all my clients that are dealing with death in their family, that are dealing with surviving abuse or dealing with an addicted partner or losing a spouse or a child or dealing with cancer and still finding purpose. So I looked at all the qualities that my clients are generous enough to show with me to make me realize we all have those qualities. We just have to tap into them. And as Kenlin said, the old patriarchal way of needing to be strong and needing to fight back is really different in how we can handle conflict, both internal to ourselves, because we all have conflict between parts of us that want to do this, parts of us that feel that way. So learning how to bring compassion and empathy first to ourselves, to our hearts, and then to bring it into our families, our relationships, and in the world. And with everything going on in the world right now, we need the divine feminine, gentle strength, clarity, listening to our intuition, having the courage to set boundaries, having the confidence to know we deserve to have our desires met and our wants met, and to just tap into who we really are underneath whatever limiting beliefs and judgments or family of origin stories. So basically, who's the divine woman? The divine woman is you. In whatever you're dealing with right now, you already have everything you need, and all we need to do is remember how to access it. So with that in mind, one of my clients is going through cancer. And instead, she's focusing on what she can do to be of service. What kind of women's group can she put together? I have another client, couple clients who's going through a divorce or thinking of a divorce or dealing with an addict or dealing with the emotions of thinking or knowing your partner's having an affair. and learning how to take a stand and be steadfast, to listen to what's in their highest good, but with compassion for the relationship that they're in, is part of their superpower. Because when we're in self, when we're coming from that calm, compassionate place inside of us, that spiritual guidepost, when we're connected to God, higher universe, nature, whatever we're connected to, when we do that, we then have the ability to bring that calm, compassionate, witnessing awareness both to ourselves and to everybody else. So with that, thank you. I want to turn to Kenlyn, because I'd love to know more about your personal story. You know, there's the facts of how you went from law to spiritual entrepreneur to the great thing that you're planning now. But can you share anything of your personal story, since that is always inspiring?
Thank you, Linda. I feel like we have a lot in common. So great to meet you here. It was good job, Marcy and Amy, for putting us together. Yeah, my personal story is, as I mentioned, being on the spiritual path for about 30 years. And that came after some pretty deep hardship and heartache. And I think my heartache was around not feeling seen and not feeling loved and not feeling like I had a place on the planet. So I relied on more masculine ways, like exterior ways of getting noticed or getting, recognition and received. So I excelled in school and went to law school and was in the top 10% of my class. And then after law school, I just realized that I was complete. After I had all this debt and all this education, I felt like I'm complete. And that resulted, ultimately, I was working in a corporate law firm and then got laid off. And I was so ecstatic when I got laid off. I felt like I could smell new smells. I was hiking in the mountains of Boulder and I was like, what is that smell? Is it bergamot? And it was like my senses came alive because I was out of that cage. And, life for me wasn't linear. And this is part of the divine feminine. She is also non-linear. And she represents a world that exists outside of our 3D. And that tapped into my own mystic heart. So just through a series of things, trial and error, I ultimately wrote a book called The Art of Turning 50. And that was kind of my launch pad into the world of coaching and supporting others. And then that led to the Divine Feminine Summits and my work with the Inner Circle and the Divine Feminine Business Mastery. And then recently I was really called. I went to Mexico and my intuitive, I said, what do you think's going to happen in Mexico? She said, you're going to rest. And I rested because I got COVID. And I started to get these visions. So COVID kind of took me down and I was like really actually happy to sleep a lot and get these visions. And I was writing them down, and a friend of mine was in Australia. So I kept texting her, and these visions came through of this platform, the Evolving Sisters Network. And it's a vision to support women who are mystical teachers in bringing their gifts, because I believe that what's happened, that we've really actually just been through, is this change of an age. We went from what we call in the yogic tradition, the Piscean era, where it was really top down, where we had like spiritual teachers like Jesus and Buddha telling us the path, and we were believers and followers. And we've entered into an age we call the Aquarian age, where it's time to be both. Like I call it like the symbol of the infinity, where we're both leaders and we're students. We give and we receive. It's non-hierarchical, it's grassroots. And so when I saw, other platforms, there was all these luminaries, and that's beautiful and wonderful, but I wanted a platform for people like us to give our own gifts, because I believe Linda said this, as we get together, there's just so much spiritual wisdom in the room. And my spiritual wisdom comes out because of your spiritual wisdom weaving and flowing through. So I think I'll stop there. There's so much more to dive into. And I'm going to turn to Marcy. Marcy, you feel like you're this wise woman, and I really have so much respect for wise women leaders who have been doing this work. And really, our work is built on the shoulders of your work, because you were doing the work when not a lot of women were doing the work. And not a lot of people may have been seeking doing the work. So I'm really curious what you see now. What's present now? What's the big change? What can you tell us about how we have evolved as the feminine?
Thanks so much for that, Kenlyn. And, I just wanted to comment on, what you're hearing. You're hearing these snippets of lives, but I want you to know that there is so much depth here in terms of what has evolved and the catalysts in the evolution. And that's something I want to dive into a little bit, but I do want to respond to your comment, Kenlyn, about, having started so many years ago. I was a graduate nurse, and the same year I was ordained as a spiritualist minister. And so that there were doors that were opened up for me with these credentials that nobody else had. And I was very blessed to be brought into the inner sanctum almost of some very conventional medical situations and asked for a metaphysical perspective, given the opportunity to create all kinds of programming, again, in very conventional spaces. But when I first started, other than those who I studied with in the church that I was ordained in, there was literally no one else to talk to, right? And so we became this very, very connected community. And that's one thing that I want to emphasize as we go on today, to start thinking about yourself as part of a community of women who are really in this place of your evolution. And so that's also why Amy and I have created this platform for you to come together. It's why Kenlyn has created hers. And you're going to hear more about the one that Linda has created. We need to be in community. And the reason for that is that I don't need to tell you that we've gone through hell and back, right? As women, we have experienced the diminishment of not only our voices, but our presence. And you spoke earlier about, and maybe it was you, Linda, or you, Kenlyn, about the patriarchal system. And I believe that what we are seeing is, again, as you said, this is not linear, which means, from my perspective, it's also not the pendulum swinging. I see it as a spiral, which tells me that before that patriarchal, and I'm getting covered in God bumps as I'm speaking, before that patriarchal system became so concrete, it meant that the feminine, the women, had to have been in a state of consciousness where they were not, let's say, at the top of their game. And it had to have created fear. And so what we have seen happen through the development of the patriarchal system is a reaction to that fear, that the same things that we've been experiencing: the loss of power, loss of control, the diminishment, the not being seen and heard. And I believe that we are at this place on the spiral where the divine feminine is coming into the fullness of herself, because her consciousness, her awareness has been raised to a level where the frequency now can pull men up. You know, there's a term in our spiritual developments called entrainment, and it's where the highest vibrational frequency becomes magnetized and it pulls up the others. And I believe that that is what we are starting to see the beginnings of as we watch all of the convention crumble at our feet. What we are seeing also is a new form of the male energy that doesn't need the same amount of control, doesn't need to be in power, but also seeks to empower the woman who is standing next to him, who, rather than needing to be aggressive, is willing to step back and say, there has to be a better way. And we are seeing this more and more and more. I know for myself, my two sons are more involved in raising their children, and they have daughters, you know, than I've ever seen before. And I cry when I think about it. It's so incredible to me. And so I know that we are in this space where, yes, we are coming into ourselves, but we're coming into ourselves in a place of our goddessness. So we are calling forward the God from within us and allowing it to lead, which is, of course, living a heart-centered life. And that's what we're doing here, to discuss more of that. Yay! So with that, Linda, I'd love to come to you and ask you, what's not written in your bio, as I referred to before? I know that there's an incredible personal story there, and it's a story of courage and resiliency, which I believe are two characteristics of the divine feminine warrior. It is this ability to be courageous and resilient. So can you share some of what that has been for you with us now? Shed some light on how you cultivated the courage necessary to stay moving forward. And thank you, because I know how heart-centered you are.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation to share this, because I don't usually. The only reason I feel comfortable doing it is to let you know I've probably been where many of you are. I've come through it, thank God. And I think Marcy was talking about entrainment, how we build other people up to a level. There's also attunement. So when it's like tuning forks, when you're near something that's vibrating at a frequency, the closer you get, you vibrate to that frequency. So whatever I have been able to get through that could help hopefully inspire you, then I'm offering it for the fact of we can attune together and support each other. So when I knew Marcy was going to ask me this question, it's like, what was I going to share? And if I made a list of the issues that I have faced, from a manic depressive father to a teacher that crossed boundaries, to an addicted husband, to a difficult divorce, to 6 different cancers, including stage 4 lymphoma and stage 2 breast cancer and colon cancer and a few others. And most importantly, the tragic death of my 41-year-old daughter to addiction after a 20-year battle. So when I think of the courage to go on, I've got to tell you, Marcy was my inspiration. One of my many, but definitely one. We met at a conference to learn how to do online sharing. And what I knew about her first was that she had lost a son. And my heart went out to her, because I always wondered how anybody could lose a child and survive. And probably on some level, karmically, spiritually, God's messages, I knew I had to really create a spiritual base for my life, to come out of my ego-driven, what should happen, to actually being okay with and at peace with whatever life was showing me, in the hope ultimately that whatever I went through, I could share with others, and they could be supported, guided, inspired to know they have the same courage and resilience. So the way I did it was, I believe very much in God. I believe very much we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and we're all here to learn and we're all here to share. I often believe things happen to us for a reason. And if we can turn around and offer a hand to somebody who's behind us that's struggling the same way, that's part of our dharma, that's part of our spiritual mission in life. So mostly what I come out from all of that story is just a great sense of gratitude. Number one, that I made it. Number two, that I believe very strongly. My daughter is close by, as Marcy's son is close by. I even believe there's a table in the sky and we'll all get there someday. But I do have to share one piece, because when Marcy talked about how hard it was to come out of the closet 50 years ago for her, 35 years ago for me, and really own that we are spiritual beings. We don't have to, even though my family thinks it's all booga booga. When the first cancer I got many years ago was colon cancer, I didn't need radiation or chemo at the time. I called my cousin in St. Louis, my 50-year-old cousin, and I think she spoke for my family, and I'll quote her. When I said I didn't need anything, I was cured. She said, "Oh, Linda, that makes me so happy. That could almost make me believe all that shit that you believe." So I share that because I have grown up in an environment where my booga booga beliefs are not welcome. They're kind of poo-pooed, but there's still an internal message that we are all channels of love and beacons of light. And whatever happens to us is something we are to use, to share, to be of service. And that's how I got through it. And I offer you the same for you to get through yours, which I know you will. So with that, I want to turn to Kenlyn. And I loved hearing your personal story. But what do you think is happening in the world right now that is calling all of us to become feminine warriors? You know, who are we? How would you describe us? And how do we answer the call? I often say I'm listening to the call, but it's my ego or my soul calling. So how do we listen to the call of our soul and be the divine feminine warriors now? What do you think?
Thanks, Linda. Beautiful story. Just a deep
Thank
bow
you.
to you and everything that has brought you here.
Thank you.
I think what might serve is a bit of a map at this point to answer that question through a way to frame something. So if we think about the fact that we are in polarity, right? We are always in the this and the that. When we carnated with dualism. And so in that dualism, you know, we have a left eye and a right eye, hemispheres of our brain, left and right hands, feet, ears, all the ways in which there are two. And so when we think about the masculine and the feminine, there are two energies that we can ascribe to each of them. And this is just a quick map that hopefully will support in how we look at the divine feminine rising and why that's important. So let's start with a familiar energy, and that energy is the dynamic masculine. That dynamic masculine gets shit done. That's like baller energy, and that's the energy that has really dominated most of the modern world. So if you think about coming from a matriarchal culture to a patriarchal culture, it really takes that kind of energy to put it behind, to put that force behind something and direct that flow. It's really very fiery energy. And then I'll talk about the other masculine energy, but that's not its opposite. I'll presence that in a moment. And then the other part of the masculine energy would be this, what we call the static masculine. And it's the masculine that is logical, very left brain, very engineer, very dot your I's, cross your T's. And that's also been deeply responsible for the emergence of the modern world, right? We have bridges that we can drive on. You know, we have algorithms. Those are all very static masculine. It's also got a lot of rigor to it. It's knowing, you know, your system or your structure. And then let's presence the feminine energies. The and they kind of go in a diagonal. So the equal and opposite of the dynamic masculine is the static feminine. The static feminine is very yin, very water, space holder, divine mother energy, the creatrix of the world, holding all of her children energy. And then the counterpart to the static masculine is the energy that I want to focus on a little bit. I know my time is going to an end, so I'm going to focus here on the dynamic feminine. She is Shakti. She is aliveness. She is chaos. She is primordial energy. And she loves it when the dynamic masculine supports her. But really, of the four, she is the one. She is nectar. She is juice. So you can see that in our modern world, we have these structures and systems and ways of getting things done, but we've really underplayed the value of the feminine. So we have left out the nurturance, and we've left out the aliveness, the juice. And so we're here as feminine beings to break down the old structures. And I'm experiencing that like in the way that I even do business, because so many of us who are successful, especially like lawyers, we were trained in that masculine way. And so it's really challenging to undo the internal structures of patriarchy, to even trust, because we have not trusted that energy. Just like Linda was sharing, our families do not believe it. They don't trust it. Do not open to that space. Because why? It's freaking wild and it's chaotic and you can't control it. With there, I will stop. So Marcy, I'm going to hand the baton to you. And with that kind of feeling of the Shakti energy, I'd love for you to speak into that aliveness of the divine feminine. What was your awakening into her? And what do you feel like the call to action is? Are we just supposed to get shit done, but in a heart-centered way? Or is there something deeper that's calling us forward with the divine feminine?
That's a really, really large question. So let me start by saying, I also want to acknowledge Linda sharing your story. I know how difficult it is. I could feel my breathing as it started to match yours to support you. I know how difficult it is to talk about those things, particularly because they have obviously been such an important part of our journey, but let's face it, it's painful, right? And we feel very vulnerable during the time that we're experiencing them, and also during the times when we share them. So my heart is with you. That's number one. Number two, Shakti. Oh, wow. I mean, I love that you use the term. I feel her so alive in me. And I do believe that Shakti energy is so much of the catalyst of why we are coming forward now. But I also know that this time that actually you spoke of earlier, Kenlyn, is the time of the Great Awakening that has been foretold for so many years. And so getting back to that spiral of evolution, the entire, you might say, intention of the spiral of the energy was to bring us to this time. And so we need to accept the truth of this, that yes, we went through periods of darkness. Yes, we went through periods of being unconscious in so many ways. And we as women, were very docile, and in that developed some aggression that the men reacted to, as I said earlier. So we have to accept that there's cause and effect that takes place in energetic exchanges all the time. To be in this place where Shakti has been released and the call is so loud, it indicates to me, number one, a level of consciousness, a level of awareness, but also that we have come into this place where we can and have integrated so much light, not only in our consciousness, in our vibrational frequency, but also in our trajectory. So, our energy is always radiating out. And the more that becomes undiluted and we stay in the divine feminine, we are radiating so much light that is feeding this evolutionary process. So more and more, there are women coming together, as I said earlier, to create communities. What we know is that there's strength in numbers, and we need that strength. It's another one of those things. We just have to accept this and start to align ourselves with creating that and putting it in the forefront. Strength in numbers. Oh, okay. That means we have to gather the numbers. So what that also means is that you will be called to let go of other things that have distracted you in the past, other things that are not, and not that they're not meaningful to our lives, but they're not as meaningful in this moment. In this moment, we're actually being called, and we choose whether or not to answer, and whether we answer with 1 foot in or 2 feet in. So you have, and I'm speaking to the audience now through your heart, I want you to breathe in the energy of the 3 women that you have here, okay, who have left other lives and have stepped into this wholeheartedly. And let it be an indication to you about how important this is right now, because every single one of us, in essence, has really sort of laid our lives on the line. We have crawled through, as Kenlyn said, we've crawled through a lot of shit, right? We've crawled through, incident after incident after incident in our own lives that demanded more of us. And that demand, of course, was always, as I said earlier, it's a choice to respond. But I think we're at the place now where it's as if there is no choice. There is no choice. It is, you must come forward. And you must come forward because I believe that you have a divine covenant to do so. I believe that your presence here, the fact that you're here listening to this program right now, whether you're live with us or you are listening to it in the replay, you have a covenant with that goddess within you. You made that agreement to be here right now, to be part of this. And we all have a role to play. So whether it is, stepping out of, a relationship that you've been maintaining just because you were afraid to step out of it, if it is a job that you do because at least you have security. If it's, in other words, if you are in situations where you are not wholeheartedly into it and just appreciative for what that is, then you're being called to let go, because there is something higher that's waiting for you to step into. And there's something, and I'm sure that all of us can attest to this, there is something that happens the moment we step out of our comfort zone, the moment that we stretch and reach for where we need to go and what we need to do, even if we can't visualize it, even if we don't have the details. But when we're in that place of surrender, because you are answering this call within you, you are connected to that inner voice of your higher self, it will be as if the universe lays itself at your feet. And this happens, and it's the most incredible thing, because what it does is it gives you your freedom back. You're no longer under the thumb or being controlled by the fear that has been keeping you in other places or your attentions in other directions. And this is where I believe we are. I believe that we are here so clearly to answer this next level of the call. And for those of us who have felt that, you know how important it is to respond to it. Because I know for myself, when I've gotten a call from that inner voice and I have not responded appropriately, I've had hell to pay. It just comes back and back and back until I finally respond. So let's just mitigate all of that pain and suffering, and let's step in and step up to who we really are and why we are here. So with that, Linda, I'd like to come to you, because I know how often that you talk about literally going from this brink of needing help, right? Where this recognition that you needed help, and to be able to reach for it and to step out as that divine warrior is to reach for help. I had to do it. I know you've had to do it. I'm sure that Kenlyn has had to do it. So what do you believe has brought us to that place where we're finally ready to reach for help? Who are we when we reach for help? And what is it in that reaching that turns on within us?
Great questions. Thank you. And I want to thank Kenlyn for mentioning that the feminine, divine feminine is chaotic, because I always blamed it on my ADD. I'm glad to hear it's a trait that I can use efficiently. And Marcy, when you were very lovingly sharing how I was stepping outside of my comfort zone and how not uncomfortable to share vulnerably, instead I felt that I was given permission. And in being invited to share, there was a freedom and a support in having all of you here to witness that makes me want to suggest that you too, in your divine feminine, owe it to share your stories, because you don't know when your story is going to touch someone or inspire someone or offer a hand to someone. So it was a gift to me to be able to share that history. And it was also a reminder to me of how far I've come. And part of the reason I've come this far is exactly as you said. I've reached out for help. I've had therapy for most of my life, off and on as needed. I was an attorney long ago. Then I became a mediator to help mediate my own divorce. Never a good idea. Don't do it. Then I became a therapist, and I studied with Dick Schwartz at IFS, where we talked about self and parts. And for me, self is that spiritual center, that calm, compassionate, clear center of self. And what I learned in IFS is we don't always come from that spiritual center. We're humans. We have human experiences. So we have parts that get exiled when we're young. We don't want to feel our pain or our sadness. We learn how to manage. Many of us learn how to manage by being codependent, caretaking, bending over backwards to please other people. And then we get extreme when we're trying to manage, but outcome those feelings. So for me, if I'm feeling that I'm ignoring my feelings, but trying to manage, I either overwork, watch too much TV, eat too much sugar, or just feel this heaviness. So I've got family in war right now, and they are dealing with more trauma than I can imagine. But we here have our own internal trauma sometimes, with parts that are burdened by things that have happened in the past, with ways we're trying to manage that aren't really helpful anymore. And what I did was look inside to find my parts. And even now, at 76, yay, I am still working. Thank you. I'll take it. I am still working my program because I just started a book recently about how I've been avoiding my feelings and how I was feeling sluggish and what did I want to do next and where was my focus. And when I started to write, I realized that it wasn't a Pandora's box of compartments that I was afraid of. It was more spurned by what the news is. It was more a hostage situation where all of my feelings of sadness and fear and hurt and pain were in different rooms, afraid to be seen. And I realized that the fear of my feelings was keeping those exiles hostage. And what I had to do was connect more to my higher self, meditate more, pray more, journal more, walk in nature, talk to friends, get support, go back to therapy, so that I can find the courage to face inside of me the parts of me that I may not want to embrace. So I have had the training at IFS for 35 years. I went to the Chopra Center where we talked about higher consciousness, where instead of being in sleep state or dream state or waking state or transcendent or cosmic or divine, there's a unity consciousness where we're all one self. And when we tap into that, and we could, as Wayne Dyer says, when we change the way we look at something, what we look at changes. So if I'm looking at it from judgment or defensiveness or fear, it's going to be a lot different than when I look at it from my higher self. And aside from the Chopra Center and David G. and those teachers that I had there, I studied with Sark for a long time. And my favorite word for her is that she described herself as a full cup of love, sharing her overflow with the world. So with that, my invitation is to fill up your cup. Deal with being as compassionate, empathic, and loving to yourself as possible. And then as you do that, you'll emanate that love and compassion, and you will be that catalyst, that beacon of light and love that you're meant to be. Don't be afraid to share it. Don't be afraid to share your story. You've got it for a reason, and sharing it will not only enrich your life, but the lives of the people you touch. So thanks for the question, Marcy. And Kenlyn, when you were talking earlier about the divine feminine and the different traits, and question number one is, are men and women of the same cloth? Number one, are they cut from the same cloth? Or even, how does a woman know it's her time to go inside, own her qualities, own her strength, and go out in the world as a divine feminine warrior? So either or.
I'll weave it. Thank you, Linda. Yeah, life is a both and. So when we talk about these polarities and we talk about actual genders of men and women, we are talking about the energies that are in each of us. So some men own more of the masculine energy, and some women own more of the feminine, but a lot of us women own more of the masculine as well, especially if we've been through these types of educational trainings that are really the dynamic masculine and the static masculine. So I think men and women are the same. We have all those energies inside of us. We are the unification. Our bodies are the unification of the polarity. In yoga, we teach that we have the lower triangle. Those are our instinctual natures represented by the first three chakras. And then we have our higher nature. They call that sometimes the angelic realm, the ability to connect with the multidimensional space. And it's our heart that is the neutral heart center that brings both heaven and earth, animal, mammal, and angel together. And that's the province of really being a human. We get to be all of that. So I think the men are awakening to the feminine inside of them. And there was a phenomenon that happened with World War II where a lot of women went to work. And from that, it kind of flipped on its head this traditional feminine masculine. So some men are more feminine and some women are more masculine. So I think that what we get to do is actually play with the energies. We actually get to notice in ourselves what energy is running. And it's a both and, because the overdoing of the masculine energy, let's say the dynamic masculine, results in a lot of stuff getting done, but it's dry and it's harsh and it's brutal. And that's what we see playing out, like in the political worlds, in the worlds of war and politics, we see that. And yet at the same time, if we're so yin, then we're really like water that doesn't have banks of a river, that has no structure, and things collapse. So inside of us, we're really called to the yoga. The yoga is the union of these two opposites. And I liken it to being on a paddleboard. I live in San Diego. And when I'm on a paddleboard, it's never static. I'm constantly working the yoga inside of myself. Where I overdo it here, I get to bring in a little bit over here. And if you're noticing that your life is dry and it's absent of joy, then the dynamic feminine is what you get to lean into. And what would she do? She's unpredictable. She's provocative. She provokes because she wants to have an experience of aliveness in the moment. And so we can look at this map to really live our lives in a way that reflects the energies in balance. And I hate to use the word sometimes in balance, because we're always not in balance. My vet used to tell me balance is only 6 feet underground. So I want to say more in harmony. And we're actually getting the things that we want. We have enough structure, but we also have enough play that's happening. So with that, I'm going to ask Marcy a question. I've kind of curated a list. I like to synthesize. So I've curated a list. You said that it's time for the next level of the call to action, that really there's this choiceless choice happening inside of the hearts and the minds of the feminine, that we are being called to bring that energy, the feminine energy that's native to us, into the world, to create the balance that's been missing since we went into a patriarchal structure. And I love that you said a couple things, and also Linda said things too, and I'm going to kind of synthesize it. One of the things is share your story. The other thing I heard you say, Marcy, is get out of outdated relationships and jobs, like, and you both have said, reach out for help. We can't do this alone. It's community. And there are a couple things I want to presence and then kind of tee that off as a question. One of the things I would add to that is being radically responsible for your own reality. If it's in your reality, you're generating it. And so what is the belief that's generating that reality? Because this is really what we're here. This is what the divine feminine wants to do, is upset the old reality. She's doing a really good job of it. And I love that you're kind of like, I could feel like the circumvent force of the spiral, all of that, creating the necessary energetics to quantum leap us. Because you said, Marcy, we're here for a spiritual awakening. This is our time. So that list, plus I'm really curious about, you mentioned light, vibration, entrainment, attunement. These are tools. Write these tools down. These are tools. What are some other tools? And I'm really loving light. You said something about light. If you have any other transmissions about light, that feels just super alive, because what seems to be happening is that as we step into the feminine side, those two polarities that we have not, the two energies in that polarity that we have not embodied, we seem to be opening ourselves up to new tools, to another multidimensional reality. So Marcy, can you give us more tools? Because how do we answer the next level of the call? You're on mute.
Thank you. So a couple of things I want to comment on, and that is, as you were describing, the characteristics of the divine feminine, and, she's wild, she's chaotic, she's unpredictable. And what came into my mind is my former husband, who would often say to me, "Why can't you just behave?" Why can't you just behave? And of course, it was said more and more frequently as I became more and more aware that I had been living outside of myself for a very long time. So as I started to come into myself and to allow myself to accept myself, who I truly was, I became more and more unpredictable. And so when you ask for tools, that's one of them. I think the most important thing that we can do, and I applaud each of you for being here, because whether you're consciously aware of it or not, and I believe you probably know quite well, but you're on this journey of intimacy into me, see. You are exploring all different parts of yourself. You are here because you, on a level, which again, I believe on a conscious level, if you're here, are recognizing that you have left too many important parts of yourself undernourished, that they have been squashed down. I know for myself, I put lots of Band-Aids on those little voices, trying to placate them, until one day they just all burst off simultaneously. And I said, okay, all right, jig's up, Marcy. But it was in that moment of realization that I honestly was living outside of myself. The life that I had created, quite masterfully, I might say, was really hell-bent on trying to live up to everybody else's expectations of me, trying to follow the roles that had been set out for me, trying to make them happy with me. So I was trying to earn love. I was trying to earn worth and value. And so the most important thing that you can do, the most powerful tool that you have at your disposal, is one that's inside of you. And that is to cultivate the courage to be honest and truthful with yourself. Am I being authentic now? Am I showing up in a way that is a true expression of myself? And how can I show up to be even an expression of my greater self, a greater expression, which requires more truth, more honesty? So the greatest tool is to develop that inner awareness. And at this point, I call it an energetic discernment. At this point in my life, when I am not aligned with my authentic self, it is so uncomfortable. I pull myself back in as fast as possible. Now, of course, there are still times that, it disguises itself and I may not recognize it right away, but I would say for the most part, yeah, I know who I am, number one, because I've spent the time, I've invested in working with others. As Linda was describing her whole, list of people that she's worked with, also, every time that I came to a place where I knew that I needed help, I reached for it. And that was so liberating, because there was a time in my life where, because of the attitudes of those around me, that if I needed help, it meant that something was wrong with me. It meant that I wasn't measuring up, or that I didn't have what it takes. And so this ability that we have to journey inside and start to honor ourselves and make ourselves the priority in terms of expression of our truth is the most important thing that you can do. As all of you know, my focus and my work is on self-love. It is helping, women to cultivate the courage to create a self-love lifestyle, because that is hard. It's challenging in this world where we've been taught the opposite. We've been taught to appease others, to fit into these roles, to always put other people first. And it's why, in actuality, it was we who were diminishing us. We diminished ourselves every time we allowed ourselves to be diminished by another. It was we who diminished ourselves. It's we who betrayed ourselves. It's we who disempowered ourselves because we acquiesced that power to others. And so these places within us that hold the keys to our empowerment, our full expression of the goddess within, is truly not only the gift that has been given us, but it is the gift that we give to others. Because when we gift our true selves to others, the whole world changes. And this is how we change the world. Just by being authentic and being aligned, as Linda had mentioned, being connected, being tapped into, tuned into that energy of the divine goddess. But guess what? You have to accept the fact that you are divine before you go anywhere. Because if you don't accept it, you will never be able to access all of this truth about yourself and be able to love every single bit of it. So this is, oh my gosh, it's such a brilliant, brilliant time in our lives when we recognize, and I'll touch on it a little bit later, Kenlyn, that we are the light. We are the communication of the energy of love. It's how love is communicated. It is through the light that we exude and we create through. So we'll talk more about that, which will be great fun. So Linda, I want to come to you, and I have a question for you, but I also have a little something that I want to ask you to do for us. I wondered if you might talk a little bit more about the parts of yourself that you put into exile. Because I want our audience to understand what that is. That's not just the bad little girl, okay? The parts that we put into exile, that we don't acknowledge, come from many different aspects of ourselves. So Linda, I would love for you to speak more about that. And also then maybe talk a little bit about, as you released them, how that affected your ability to be steadfast in the life that you kept walking through and creating. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good. Thank you, Maria. everybody take a breath right now. And I want you to, as you're taking a breath, you're going to rate the answer. You're going to rate this statement on a 1 to 10 scale and just see how honest you are with it. So the statement you're going to make is, and I think most of you here will know what the answer is, but I am divine. So just say it to yourself 3 times. I am divine. I am divine. I am divine. And if you want to put into the chat or just wants to answer for yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you find yourself in that awareness? And I'm going to suggest most of you will get this answer, but if anyone has anything lower than a 10, it's just a part. It's either a limiting belief, it's a burden, it's something that we can help heal. So when Marcy asked about how do you help your parts heal, you give them, yes, you are a 10. And everyone's a 10. Anything that makes you believe you're not, again, is either a story you picked up from your childhood, it's a feeling that you had like sadness, hurt, fear that wasn't acknowledged. Marcy was just describing many codependent traits that many of us are. We're caretaking, we put other people's needs in front of our own. We're perfectionists, we're people pleasers, we don't like conflict, we avoid saying no. Deep breath. And of course, I'm a card-carrying, recovering codependent. So I had all of those parts. And as my life unfolded, I became very adept at acting as if everything was okay, even when it wasn't. And so I exiled the parts of me that were sad or scared or hurt. I even exiled, since I'm a really good codependent, I exiled my anger too, because nice girls don't get angry, or so I believed. So what I learned to do was to create my own compassionate communication with the parts of me that I've exiled. And in compassionate communication, we relate to our best self in whatever way, finding God within, meditating, all those things I did. And I let go of my limiting beliefs, or I'm in the process of looking at every belief I had about myself, how life should be, the world, other people, expectations. I think you may have heard that expectations are premeditated resentments. So try not to do that. And when Kenlyn was talking about radical responsibility for our own reality, I'm going to suggest on top of that to have radical acceptance for everything that is. And you do that by bringing your higher self, your conscious witnessing awareness to what's happening to you. And you show up as best you can, as authentically as you can, speaking for your parts instead of from your parts. And wherever there's a trauma from the past, which of course makes you reactive in the present, something could be happening in your current relationship that you feel like you did when you were an inner child, a little child. Well, you go in and you heal that burden. You unburden the energy that you've been carrying. You bring light to those places in you that had the heaviness. And you show up in a way that makes you resilient, keeps you steadfast, and you don't have to feel like you're that bouncing thing where somebody's going to bounce you and then you come back and they bounce you again. You're like a tree or a mountain. You learn how to put down roots to the center of the earth and know your value, know your worth, emanate from that reality. And then whatever comes your way, you can help it heal. So what I do when I sent my husband to the Betty Ford Clinic for the first time, and as a codependent, they asked me to write down things I was angry about. Well, I never got angry. I turned the other cheek. I was nice. I pretend. So I went to my room, and about 10 yellow sheets later, I came down with everything I was angry about, even what happened to me in 5th grade. And just making room for that part. What I do when I now journal, sometimes if I'm journaling on the computer, I'll have my envious part in green, I'll have my scared part in yellow, I'll have my angry part in bold, and I will ask from my higher self, who can I help? And then I just let them speak, because when you give your parts the attention, they can transform. And then once I've asked for all the information they want to give me, I write them a love note from my higher self to them. I see you, I understand you, and more importantly, I'm here for you. I, higher self, connected to God, oneness, higher power, true self. I am here to help heal the parts of me that are wounded, that are burdened, that are locked in managerial or protective or extreme roles that they think are helping me. And the more you practice being in self, the more that happens, the faster you get back to that, like you said, snap back into the you that's really you, not the conditioned you, not the ego-driven you. At the Chopra Center, they used to say that we're spiritual being locked in a body for the span of a lifetime. But when we're aware of our spiritual beingness, the 10 that we are, then we help our parts by acknowledging them, by bringing them out of the labyrinth, by shining love and acceptance, and continuing to do that on a regular basis, no matter how old we get. So thank you for letting me answer that. And Kenlyn, as we're talking about the divine feminine and the call, I'm sure everybody listening would like to know how they can tune in to when it's their time and what it would look like for each of them to use their divine qualities to make that entry, bigger entry into the world that they're called to make.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks for all that parts work too. That is, I think that's extraordinary work. It's been super instrumental in me being able
That's
to
Dick
expand.
Schwartz in the internal family systems therapy. I want to give him the credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing work. Yeah. And thank you for bringing that forward. Well, what I'm noticing as I work with women in varying capacities of understanding their purpose and monetizing that in a business sense or creating content for the network, I'm noticing that there's a trend, an awakening to take this authenticity, this spirit quality that is coming through you in a body, and being self-expressed in that. So everything that you're saying, the bedrock of what the three of us have been saying, but particularly Marcy and Linda, in discovering their authentic self, that's the gateway to the expression of how the divine wants to play through you on earth. And I think it bears repeating, if you've heard this before, that there will never be a version of you again. There has never been a version of you before, and there will not be one after. So sometimes when I compare myself, I get to remember that the truth of it is that consciousness chose to appear as this. It's a template. It's like having a beautiful window that the light shines through, and that each one of us is a different type of window. We have different colors or shapes to the window panes. And our job is to clean the window so that the light can shine through. And it shines through as this. It's appearing now as this. And that gives me a lot of really permission, comfort to just do me instead of doing it someone else's way. And I think the breakdown that so many of us are feeling and the upheaval that we're feeling is because we have thought that we need to be someone else to be successful, or that to be loved, really, even. And we're coming home to the notion that that the genius and the magic is really in our own particular expression of it. And I study a lot of the gene keys. Some of you may know it. It's based on human design. And it was foretold that from now till 2027, our call to action is really to learn about our authentic self and to begin the expression of that. I like to study astrology as well, and we have this change that's occurred where our future collective destiny is coming from the sign of birth, the sign of the I am. So more importantly, like, because the opposite, as we are in polarity, is the we. So it's an interesting time when we really need some we juice and some connectivity. We're first being called to embody the I am. Who are you as the divine in flesh? And I start to see the matrix when I think of it in that way, in that prism. I think, oh, I get it. How we're all going to get along is ultimately through being the most self-expressed version of me, because that requires so much self-love, so much permission, so much internal validation, that if I'm actually like that with myself, I'm going to be like that with others. Because I already get that the keys to the kingdom are not forcing people to do something, like forcing cogs in a wheel to do a job that nobody wants to do, but instead that each person is self-expressed and self-actualized, and that we really get to trust and know that all the things are going to self-organize and take care of themselves when our come from place is to be fully ourselves. And it's such a paradox for spiritual people, because we get to know that we're not this, like I'm not this. And at the same time, I've been given the assignment in this 3D reality as this. So I'm rooted in the knowing that who I am is everything. And I also get to work that yoga of how do I express as me? And it sounds so like, well, natural. And so it should be easy. but as Linda and Marcy have been talking about, there's just layers of conditioning that get to come off so that we can really experience our own light. And for me, it's been a lot of trial and error. Like, yeah, that was not it. But I'm learning. And that seems to be what's on the menu for all of us right now. So I think with that, I'm going to conclude my share and just ask Marcy, would you like to sum up? I think you've given us so much. And there's been so much meat here. I'm wondering if there's something that you can share for women right now. Like, what can they walk away with right now when they get off of this Zoom or they turn off the replay? What can they do right now that can support them into coming into this authentic version of them and really embodying the divine feminine in their lives, like in a way that matters, in a granular way?
Thanks for the question. And before I get there, a couple of things that I would like to bring up for our audience. Number one, I just want to remind you that Amy and I have a wonderful membership group, and it's called the Heart-Centered Women. And what happens is after our show, the following week, we have a live workshop where we do a very deep dive into whatever the topic was of the month. In addition, we have some wonderful programs that are contributed by our speakers that are given to you freely, and just for being members with us. And it's an opportunity to really get some one-on-one intimate time with Amy and I. And it's a wonderful program. And if you look in the chat, Savannah has given you the link where you can sign up and get more information. The other thing is that I just want to remind everyone that at the end of this program, we'll be taking live Q&A. So if you have any questions that have come up about anything that Linda has said or Kenlyn has said, please, write them up. And by the way, if you're feeling too shy, about raising your hand and asking the question, you can put it in the chat and we'll ask the question, and you'll have an opportunity to hear from all of us, right? We'll chime in, give you our feedback. And then one more thing is that at the end of the show today, Amy and I typically do what we call a connect the dots. And it's just a little post-show intimate gathering for anybody who wants to stay with us. And we share our aha moments. So what I want you to know is that while I've been listening to Linda and to Kenlyn, I've had aha moments just like you. And I'm certain that they've had them as well. And by the way, Linda and Kenlyn, you're certainly welcome to join, afterwards. But I just want everyone to know that this show and Amy's and my intention is really to give each of you the opportunity to know that you're supported, know that you are loved, and that we are here to guide you and to explore with you how we might serve you. So you have lots of opportunity here to dive deep in your own level, okay? So, and of course, no good, no bad, no right, no wrong, just making certain that you know what's being offered to you. So the question is, what can anybody do right now? And for me, I think I would answer that in that the most important thing to do, as I said, is, I said earlier, I should say, is to recognize that you are divine. And so the beauty of this life is that it gives you the opportunity for you to explore that divinity. And you are meant to. You are meant to experience life in any way possible so that you can have reflected back to you your divine self in action. So there are two aspects of this. When you start to accept yourself as a divine being, what happens also is that you take on this knowingness that your responsibility as a divine being is as a creator. You're here to create from your divinity. Now, we have seen many instances where we have created from our humanity and forgot about our divinity. So what happens when you start to accept yourself as a divine being and you recognize the essential, you are so important in the creation of this new world that we're all yearning for, this new way of being. And you start to inquire within you, which is where these answers are. What comes to my mind is this beautiful verse from A Course in Miracles, and it says, "Where should I go? What should I do? Who should I speak to? And what should I say?" To me, it immediately connects me, reminds me that I'm in alignment with my divinity when I ask those questions, and that I'm stepping into that covenant that I know I'm accountable for. So to go out from this place and to simply start to ask your team, which is with you and within you at all times, to start showing you your divinity. You will start to see it expressed through you and reflected back to you. So it may start to show up as you, let's say, for instance, that you're in this moment of conflict where you typically would react in a very aggressive way or in an angry way. And all of a sudden you find yourself taking a step back and just choosing to respond rather than react. Choosing to come from a place within your heart. So maybe, calling upon that compassion that you have. You start to go through this process where you first are giving yourself that compassion because you may have had a tendency first to react with aggression. And then, of course, to recognize the divine you that says, maybe there's a different way. Maybe there's a more expansive, more loving, kinder, softer way that you can respond. So for me, I think that that's probably how I started to really notice that I had shifted in the way that I was looking at myself and looking at the world. I wanted to be different. I wanted to change the way I reacted and step into response. And that driving force within me was that I wanted to live authentically and be free to be me, which meant I had to claim that for myself. So all of these things that we're talking about are things that you must claim for yourself. And that, by the way, is a huge step towards self-love. Self-love is that journey where you start to claim you for you. You start to claim all of the authentic parts of you. You start to accept those parts, love those parts, nurture those parts, nourish them. And what happens when you fall in love? You want to shout it from the rooftops. You want to share it with everybody. You are joyous. And that joy is what will propel you forwards. So yeah, be in that moment of being willing to, again, to continue that deep dive inside, but ask, how can I see this differently? And when you see it, align with it. When you see it, align with it. It will make all the difference in the world. Your world especially, I might add. So with that, let's see. I'm actually thinking we are close to 2:30. I'm actually wondering if anybody has any questions from our audience. Let's start taking some questions and seeing where they take us. Does anybody want to either use your reaction button at the bottom of your screen and raise your hand? Or you can put it in the chat and we can take them like that. Anybody have any questions? Did I see, Maria, did you have your hand up? Okay, great. Yep, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Marcy, and thank you, ladies, for everything. It's been lovely. I am Latin, and you know Latins are passionate. And I'm really tired of being really good and then really bad and really good and really bad. And I don't want to be in the middle. I mean, I don't want to be just the, but I'm tired of this. I mean, it's exhausting. What could you please recommend? Because it's draining. Thank you.
That's such a great question. Linda, do you want to jump in on that one?
No, I'd rather listen to you first and then I'll respond after that. You too.
Okay. Then Kenlyn, go ahead.
I was really curious what Linda was going to say.
I haven't
Does anybody want me to jump in first?
I haven't decided yet. Go ahead, Marcy. Come
Okay,
on.
I'll jump in. And thank you. You can see what a great question that was, right? Because we've had to pause to think about it. All right, so here's what's coming through. Those highs and lows are very purposeful. Number one, they help to anchor in a particular energy frequency. From my perspective, the more that we are able to discern energy, the faster we can choose to pivot and call upon a different energy to take us in a different direction. So as you experience the high, really take it in and feel all the different things that you're feeling in that exhilaration, okay? Feel, what does it feel like in your body? What are the thoughts that accompany it? What are the kinds of things that you want to create from it? This is how we get to learn about energy frequencies. Now, what will happen is that as you put your focus on that, you will start to experience very similar things in other energies. So it might not be at that peak all the time, but you'll see, because this is how energy moves, right? It always calls other energy to itself. So you will start to experience other experiences or other opportunities where you will have similar experiences to that. Now, the greatest thing when you hit those lows, okay, the most important thing is to not beat yourself up over it, but to be curious. And not curious as much about what took you there as it is to be curious about what you're experiencing. Where are you feeling that? How is that showing up? How is it affecting your thoughts? Because these are all clues for you going forwards, where you may not feel the sensation, but will have a thought. And that thought could be your first indicator that you're heading in a downward trajectory. So what you always want to do is to, rather than rejecting any of that, is actually to invite it in. You invite it through your heart. And you say, here's what I say, and I'm just going to share this with you. Whenever I'm experiencing something that would appear to be low, the first thing I say is, thank you for showing yourself to me. It tells me that I've lost my footing. And what happens when you lose your footing? You want to make certain that your footing is secure because you want to continue to walk forward or upwards. So when I know that I've lost my footing, I say, okay, well, what do I need to do to secure it? So if you were, for instance, climbing up the side of a mountain, you would find that rock that can hold you, right? You would find the rock that would give you the strength and the security to go forwards. So for me, I've developed a very strong spiritual practice, and my daily spiritual practice is what carries me through all of that. So in that moment of low, where you may have a tendency to start beating yourself up and saying, what the hell's wrong with me? And why can't I do this? And why can't I do that? Rather than that, just ask, number one, say, thank you for showing yourself to me. And then where do you want to go from there? And what is it in your experience that will give you that security in placing your foot in that next climb up, right? So this is where you take on this mastery of self. And again, it comes from that into me see journey. I know that there are certain things that I do if I'm really in a downward spiral. And this just happened to me, by the way, the other day. I could just feel my whole energy field contracting. I'll tell you what happened. We had a death in the family, and it was traumatic, and I could feel my energy field coming in, which is not a bad thing because, you know, what contracts also expands, but I could feel it coming in. But I could also feel that I needed to be secure. I was feeling very insecure. So for me, in those moments, I actually visualized myself in the heart of God. And what I do, I'm just very silent until I hear the heartbeat. And then I match the rhythm so that my heart and the heart that I'm nestled in is one and the same. And then I can come out. That's magic to me. And it's nearly instantaneous. So this is how we ascertain that information about what is going to work for us. And again, number one, you must develop a daily spiritual practice. It is the only thing that will carry you through the life that we are in the midst of. In the midst of all that chaos, we must remain resilient and steadfast, because we must remain empowered. We must. It's our covenant. It's what we're doing here. We're banding together in that love and power. Anybody else want to jump in here? Linda.
I'll jump in now. Marcy, that was beautiful. It was perfect, everything you said. And I know it's touching Maria and everybody deeply. It made me remember and remind myself about the need for that daily spiritual practice, the meditation, the journaling, the prayer, the being in nature, whatever. And when I share compassionate communication with people and teach them how to do it, it's how to connect to your best self by accessing your higher self, and to let go of the limiting beliefs. And unfortunately, it's our ego that carries the limiting beliefs. It's not our ego that expands us so much and makes us grandiose or hubris filled sometimes. It's really the ego that contracts us into the shoulding that we do on ourselves. Like you mentioned, we should be doing this, we shouldn't be doing that. But giving ourselves permission to let go of those limiting beliefs and really listen to what's true for us, including if what's true for us is to get in bed for 3 days with some chocolate and a clicker and your TV and stay there, which is actually what I put in a magazine one time. And my brother said, with all your education, that's what you tell people to do. And yes, I do, because we don't do it. We don't give ourselves permission to turn, like Marcy said, in the direction of the overwhelm, of the judgment, of the shoulding, of the exhaustion. Deep breath for me too. That we all face daily with whatever's on our to-do list. So if we can really attune to that higher self and bring that self-love, like you said, Marcy, to the parts of us that want to say uncle, and give them permission to relax. Give them permission to write their thoughts down if they feel like they want to get it out. To give them permission to, like you said, I love what you said about inviting them to the heart of God. But when our egos, that edging God out energy comes, and we start believing our old stories, then we tap into the burdens that we've been carrying, but we don't do anything with them because we exile them and feel like we have to carry on. And we don't. We can take a stop. We can take time off. We can tell whoever you're working with or connected to, you just need some time. And then you take it without guilt, right, without shoulding, without any agenda. And I always say 3 days, even if people gave themselves a day without any shoulding, they'd get back in touch with who they really are. So like you said, Marcy, just that anchoring into that self energy, to that calm, compassionate, curious, caring, confident place that you know is inside your heart, all of you. And showing that love, as Marcy said, to all parts of yourself, including the parts that are saying stop, and honoring what you're hearing, because that's a divine message too, I think.
Mhm. So right on. And I just wanted to add, as Linda was talking about chocolate and clicker, for those of you who have followed me, I mean, you know that I, talk about scheduling a cry day all the time. And whenever I can feel that emotional, threshold, right at that rim, I schedule myself a cry day. And I will, do whatever I need to do to bring the tears on. And I stay in bed doing that until I've cried out. I usually give myself about 2 hours or so. I don't go typically beyond that. And then I, will start to journal and bring comfort to my heart, soothe my heart, love myself in whatever way is being called for. But remember that you are in this place as a divine being, but you're in duality, you're in a contrasted universe here, right? So you're always going to be confronted with, parts of you that are not in alignment with your godliness. And that's okay. It's what we're doing here. So I hope that helped you. And yeah,
It
ease
reminds
your heart.
Exactly. It reminds me of a movie, Broadcast News, where Holly Hunter got up every morning, sat on the edge of the bed, cried, and then got on with the day. I love that.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah. Any other questions? Or Kenlyn, did you want to jump in there with anything, or?
Yeah, I want a couple things. I noticed that exhaustion is resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just play with what am I resisting? Because emotions are a wave.
Yeah.
And in order to really be that self-expressed creative fire, the other polarity that's contained in us is the descent.
Yes.
So oftentimes we don't make space, but if you think about it in the artistic world, like that kind of tortured artist, really there's a truth in that. The truth in that is that there's a melancholic low that is where the fertile ground is. And there's a lot that's happening on the inside if we're not resisting, that then ends up being that creative spark.
Yeah.
So it's part and parcel of the same axes, and not resisting it, all the things you all said that just allow that percolation to happen.
Yeah. No, it's great. Great. Thank you so much for your question, Maria. Anyone else have any other questions? Either raise your hand or put it in the chat.
Tony raised her hand.
Let me.
Yeah.
Tony, do you want to ask us a question? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking for the words.
Oh.
I feel controlled by my environment. There are things I would like to do, but the conditions are not present. Or, like, for instance, I have a housing authority apartment, which is rent control. And this organization got a grant to remodel our units. There's 4 buildings with 3 apartments each. They began April 5th. And they're still not done. And I have asthma. And I've been in hospitals on breathing machines, and I can't hang around that kind of atmosphere. And it's over 7 months. And they're just getting to my kitchen. And I've been going Airbnb and people's spare rooms, as big as a closet or a whole downstairs of a house that hasn't been used. And I'm
so
getting ready
what is your question?
Well, this resistance and the exhaustion and the not bringing the, not feeling the heart of God in all of this, although it's clearly present, but it's a lot of pain. And I tripped, I broke my wrist.
Oh, goodness.
I need help with just about everything now.
Mhm.
I'm not used to it. And yet people tell me how wonderful I am and how great I look, and how much I've contributed to their lives. I'm a musician, I play violin.
So, Kenlyn or Linda, do you want to jump in here and just,
Here, first of all, I'd love to offer my heart to your heart, just to acknowledge what you're feeling. And let you know that you are supported and prayed for and held in compassion. Because I'm a therapist, I usually ask this to everybody. Have you been in therapy to process what you're feeling? Because the pain I'm hearing you talk about has a lot of fear in there, which you have every right to feel. And I'm just wondering what you're doing to get support for yourself, whether there are friends or, because the content of what you're saying, you know, is a real factual issue that you have to deal with. And we could brainstorm, you know, what you might do or who you might call or whether you need a lawyer or anything like that. But the process by which you're doing it, in which you feel like a victim, I think, and you are a victim of circumstances, and you feel like you have no choice or no advocacy for yourself. How do you take care of those parts of you? Does it remind you of other times in your life where you felt that way? And how do you go to that inner child in you and let her know that you are a divine being who is resilient, who is going through a very tough time? And whatever PTSD we feel from something that happened to us in our past, we can unburden that. So we show up in the present. And I'm just hoping that you have access to somebody that you trust who can be with you as you process everything that you have every right to feel. Does that make sense?
Mm,
Yes, it does.
that's great. Thank
And-
you.
Okay.
And I don't, my medical doctor and my friends say, you know, find a therapist. But I've interviewed maybe 10 different people, and
Keep
I don't
going.
want to talk.
Keep going.
Keep
Keep
going.
going.
Just have
You'll
a thought
find it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
It might be before your eyes, is what I said.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
My local llama.
Yeah. No, that's
Exactly.
great.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for being with us and for having the courage to bring, you know, those troubles forward. I really commend you for that. Yeah, that's not easy.
Carrying that forward, you might want to journal with those parts. You take a few deep breaths, belly breaths, and you bring that self-energy, that self-awareness to the situation, like Marcy had said before, when we bring that energy in, then go to the parts of you that have fears, that are in pain, that are scared, that are hurting, that are angry, and just take dictation.
Yeah.
Get it out. Write down everything that you're feeling so you don't have to perseverate on it. Get it out. And then once you've asked her, what else, what else, what else, write her a love note. Pain, I see you. I'm here. Fear, I see you. So you've got already the tools you need. You just may need some support and guidance in using them.
That's great, Linda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Keep looking.
Yeah. Kenlyn, did you want to add anything?
No, I thought you two were amazing. Great.
Okay.
Great responses.
Thank you. So are there any other questions? Any other questions?
I would like to take a moment to honor everybody who's here today and who's listening. It's really amazing when you can connect with people that are really tapping into their divinity, which is what you're all doing by being here. To stay for this length of time, to listen to three people, offer suggestions, to ask courageous questions, and to begin to be willing to look at your life from the perspective of you have everything you need. You may have some burdens, you may have some limiting beliefs, but when you show empathy to yourself, compassion to yourself for everything that you're feeling. And then you can show empathy in your relationships that may be causing you problem, but you do it from love. And as we always like to say, love is the answer, but it starts with loving yourself. So hopefully you will take from this different ways to love yourself, be yourself, express yourself, and find all the peace, love, and joy that's yours to have. So I just wanted to add that.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Anyone else? Okay, well, as long as we have, well, number one, I want to remind everyone that we will do a brief connect the dots at the end of the show at 3:00. But right now, I would love to hear from Kenlyn. And Kenlyn, can you tell everybody all about the program that you have, the work that you're doing? And then we'll hear from you, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Thank you, Amy and Linda. So great to meet you. And sisters, and I see one brother on here. Great to be with you today. The work that I'm involved in is called the Evolving Sisters Network, and it's a platform. I call it like an etheric market space where divine feminine women can bring their courses, and we will weave them through our platform and sell them. We have group experiences and cohorts, and we have a membership. It's in its infancy. I just launched it last year, and you can find it at evolvingsisters.com. So yeah, you're the brother, Dennis. Yeah, exactly. Acknowledging you here to be being among this conversation of divine feminine frequency. So yeah, I invite people who have a body of work to reach out to me. I'd love to support the creation of courses in the areas of healing, empowerment, and leadership to exist on our platform. And I think that's it. Upcoming in 2024, we have the Evolutionary Feminine Leadership Summit and this feminine reclamation bundle that we're creating. So there's a lot planned. I think the divine feminine is busy creating things that will support our flourishing, our unfolding, our rising, so that we really see in our 3D this consciousness reflected. It's been an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you. It's wonderful. And so wonderful to get to know you and to hear about your program and how you're supporting the divine feminine into her full-on blossoming. So thank you so much for all of that. So Linda, can you tell us about what you're working on?
Yes, well, I'll briefly say that I went to one of my trainings and I stood up to talk about what I was doing, and this beautiful soul who's on the call with us, Maria, came up to me and said she wanted to help support me. And she has been my right-hand person, my left brain as well. And we have co-created the Compassionate Communication Academy. And on that platform, we have the Compassionate Mediation Program, which is a 6-hour video series for people who are thinking of divorce. I have a certification program for other therapists and coaches and professionals to use these skills to help other people. And I'm very invested in sharing more compassion with ourselves and others and learning how to be empathetic. Learning how to, so if you go to lindakroll.com/empathy, which is the gift through Marcy and Amy that they offered for us, you get a template on how to speak for your hurt, sad, scared parts, how to listen and understand and show empathy with someone else without defending or rationalizing, and how when we truly stay connected to our higher self, let go of our limiting beliefs, heal the pain from our past, we can relate from our hearts. And that's what we're all doing here. And I'm so honored to be included and want to help you continue on your journeys too.
Thank you so much.
Still have private clients. So for anyone who's listening, they can contact me.
Great. And thank you also for just everything that you brought to the program today, and, you know, sharing your heartfelt story. It was so important for us all to hear that. I would just like to remind everyone again that, and Savannah, maybe you can put the link in the chat one more time, that we have a wonderful membership program with Amy and I called the Heart-Centered Woman. And you have access to Amy and I on a very intimate level. We do a workshop, as I said, every week following our show, and we do a deeper dive into the theme, as well as, you know, offer you many other programs that often are gifted by our speakers. And it's a wonderful way for you to get a diversity of programming. And the other thing is, let's see, I want to mention that, well, first off, I just want to mention that I miss Amy so much today, how much I always love going back and forth with her, and her energy is so beautiful, and she has such a unique way of looking at things. And so I'm hoping that you will join our membership and you can come into our workshop and hear what Amy has to say on the theme that we've had for today, because I'm sure that she has so much that she would love to be sharing with you, if only she had a voice. So she unfortunately is really under the weather. But that program, by the way, is something that Amy and I are very, very proud of. It's an opportunity for us also to reach the intimacy within ourselves and share from our hearts with you as we help you to do the deeper dive within you. So it's actually quite wonderful. So with that, let's see, on my own, I would invite you to check out selfloveuniversity.com and marcynewman.com. There are lots of programs there that are there to support you. And I also want to invite you to join with us again next month. It will be a deep dive with just Amy and I doing our annual program on grief. Now, as you know, many of us experience grief in many different ways. And in truth, we are all grieving much of the time in our lives as we are letting go of that which no longer serves us, and letting go of the false beliefs, the fantasies, the dreams, and of course, the relationships, the jobs, and all too often, the loved ones. And so Amy and I, this has become an annual thing where every single December, we offer up our program for people who want to come in and talk about their losses, and for us to support you and hold your heart and hold space for your healing. That is the intention of that program. And it's something that Amy and I really do put our heart and soul into. It's something that we believe that is probably one of the most essential aspects of life, to understand grieving and to welcome it in. It's a real affirmation of life and love. So we invite you all to join us then. And so in just one moment, we'll be turning over into the connect the dots. And I just want to check one more thing. Let's see. I know that we have a sponsor, but I don't have that information. Savannah, do you have the information for our sponsor? Would you mind putting that in the chat, please? This is for every person here. This is a hotel savings card. You get $100 off on any on any hotel that you're booking on through Trinity Travel. And Amy has used this already. She said it worked great. And the link is in the chat. Seriously, all you do is go to that link, you'll get the certificate, and you can apply it to any hotel that takes it. It's amazing. So with that, I'm going to thank everyone for being here. Of course, our guests, our experts, thank you again for being so heart-centered and sharing such beautiful, beautiful guidance and perspectives. And for anyone who'd like to follow me into Connect the Dots, we'll head right in. Kenlyn, thank you so much. Yep, I see you're leaving. Linda, will you be staying for Connect the Dots for a few minutes, or are you going to be leaving us?
I could stay for just a couple minutes because I have a client that is scheduled.
Okay, very good. So with that, I think we will head out and go into Connect the Dots. Let me just thank you all. This has been wonderful. Okay, so here we are at Connect the Dots. And the purpose of this is Amy and I, like I said earlier, we love to discuss the aha moments that we've had. So Linda, if you have something that was an aha moment for you that you'd like to share, you can bring it up and we can have everybody chime in and see what their thoughts are about it.
Gee, I have so many. Wait a second. Yep, I'm unmuted. I loved, as I mentioned, just the chaos of knowing that even though our life may feel chaotic, we really are being divinely led. I like the idea of attunement and entrainment so that we know as we are being our best self, we are helping the universe, helping our families, helping the world create a better world. I love the idea of radical responsibility and the covenant that Amy mentioned in terms of what is our purpose. I'm never quite sure. I find that when I stop asking and listen for the answer, I do better. I find that when I feel, as the way Maria was describing how she felt, that I often feel I'm on the cusp of a breakthrough, that I'm going through the transition from caterpillar to butterfly, but I'm kind of locked in the chrysalis, feeling very dark and lonely. So that's when that higher self-love is needed even more to reach for those parts that are scared of the dark, with the belief and the trust that we are being divinely led. So I love that Marcy mentioned all those codependent parts that I am an expert on. And just giving ourselves permission to be authentic, to be one of the movies said, let your freak flag fly. I remember when I first started doing therapy, I would not use the word spiritual unless the duck, most of you are too young to remember Groucho Marx, but if the duck came down, it was a magic word, and then I could talk about spirituality. But now we're all spiritual beings, and we need to take our place as a leader, as a divine feminine warrior that we are, and just bring it to all parts of ourselves and all parts of the world. And basically, the exhaustion is resistance. I love that because when I realized recently how exhausted I was, and somebody said, because I said, what are you noticing? Depression, sadness, pain? She said, no, I noticed resistance, which I didn't even think of as a feeling. And I realized I was resisting stopping because I kept pushing on. So that's why, you know, as we share with each other, we tell each other things that we each need to hear. So I'm so grateful to all of you for allowing me space to do my own processing and to share with you. I'm sorry, I can't stay on much longer, but I will.
That's fine. And we're so happy that you're able to share all of that. Thank you so much. Anybody have any comments or anything for Linda? please make sure you put your gratitude in the chat for our speakers today. That always makes us feel so good. And again, if you've had any aha moments, put them in the chat, even if you don't, want to share them with us verbally. Put them in the chat. Let us know what your aha moments were.
I've got one more, if I may share.
Oh, sure.
Because there is Kathy on here who has been an inspiration to me in all the years we have worked together. And I find that the more I can connect with someone and their self is a space for me to show my parts, no matter what relationship which they're in, that she, like Maria, has been such a gift to me. So I just wanted to take the time to acknowledge that.
That's very sweet. That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And that actually brings me to one of my aha moments. And I don't know who said it. It could have been Kenlin, that gratitude is a bridge. And, so when I think about the energy of gratitude, it's kind of how I look at things, always from a vibrational frequency. I am looking and feeling the energy of gratitude as I look at it almost as a place setter. I don't know how to describe that, but gratitude to me, so let's just talk about gratitude for a moment. Gratitude is what we express when we have received something that is meaningful, right? That is maybe something our heart has been yearning for, or something that will help to complete us or complete our desires. So when I look at gratitude, I look at it as kind of a placeholder for that. So it tells me that when I'm feeling grateful, particularly with nothing in mind, so in other words, there's no particular correlation, what that is telling me when I'm feeling that energy is that I have actually opened up to receive the abundance of the universe. And that's what I want to share with you. So when you come into that energy of gratitude, like for me, sometimes it happens, I can just be driving down the street and all of a sudden, the sun will be shining through the trees and I'll just feel this elevation in my heart. And immediately it goes into gratitude. I feel in that moment, I have opened a portal for all of the abundance of the energy to flow through. And so, having said that, so when she said gratitude is a bridge, I went, oh yeah. For me, gratitude takes me through a portal into a whole different level where I know I will be receiving what's waiting for me there. It's amazing. Actually, it's just such an amazing feeling. Any thoughts or comments on that?
I have one, excuse me, before I go. And when we're talking about self and parts and what it means to be in self, the IFS 8 C's of self are calm, clear, compassionate, curious, confident, created, connected. Can't remember the 8th one, but you get it. I always add gratitude to that, because when we're grateful, you're exactly right. We're in that receptive mode. We're not judging. We're not projecting into the future. We're not ruminating over the past. We're present, we're open, and we're remembering our blessings, which is the way to help all the parts of us that are suffering.
That's great.
So I do have to go. I'm so grateful.
Thank you.
And sending love and thanks. Thank you so much, everybody.
And happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
To you, Linda, and to all with us. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye. And so one more aha moment I had, and that was that expectations are premeditated resentments. Does anybody have a comment or a question about that? I thought that was a powerful statement. So here's what that says to me. it says to me that when we have expectations that we want things to go in a particular way or get a particular result, that we are setting ourselves up for disappointment. And that disappointment always, almost always, evolves into resentment, doesn't it? And so we have to then ask the question, well, where are the expectations really coming from? So as I follow that trail of energy, I would say that expectations are connected to the energy of the ego. It's almost like a baited hook. You might say it's a hope hook, right? So the ego has cast the line. It's fishing to see what's going to get you to grab onto it, to hold onto it. And knowing that there is some sort of bait on the end of that hook. And it's also going to have a, what are those shiny things called? I don't remember. Anyway, but something is going to catch your eye. It's baited so that you grab onto the hook. And once it has you hooked, what happens? It can reel you in and take you out of the water, where you have the freedom to swim, to frolic, to jump, to have fun, to explore, to have adventures. And so what we need to remind ourselves of is that when we can fine-tune our ability to discern energy, we can discern that feeling of having an expectation and shift from expectation into surrender, just allowing it to unfold. We can shift into trusting. We can shift into faith. And we can also shift into knowingness, a knowingness that all things are working in our favor at all times. And so with every experience, we will be given an opportunity to raise our sights, you might say, to come from a higher place. And that we can actually be the catalyst ourselves for our own rising of that frequency, of that view, when we're able to discern that energy, particularly of expectations. So I thought that that was really interesting. And if anybody has anything to add, Sue says, I can see that with myself. Yeah. I'm sure others can too. And what else?
I once heard that we can go into expectancy.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Yeah, because expectation is this has to happen, otherwise, right? And expectancy is, I wonder what's going to happen.
Oh, I love that shift. That's a great one to share. Thank you. Yeah, it's more like going into curiosity, right? Like, oh, I wonder where that's coming from. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else? All right. Well, unless you have any other, let's see. Oh, Kathy, thank you. Such a fantastic time together. Hugs and kisses to all. Thank you so much. Yes, it was absolutely fantastic. And I'm sorry that Amy wasn't here, but again, I hope that you'll join our membership and you'll get a full-on dose of her during our workshop. She's absolutely wonderful. And by the way, I want to add Amy's website to the collection that we have here. And it is amyshade.com. AMYSCHADT. And Amy has wonderful programs also that she offers. And you're going to get all of this in a couple of emails. We want to make sure that you have all the contact information and all the information on all of us. So expect that email. And let's see, Sue says, thank you all. Love and light to you. Love and light to you as well, Sue. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Yeah, just my wish for you is to go into this Thanksgiving with the greatest wave of gratitude for yourself, for everything that you are, everything that you have claimed for yourself, the steps that you have taken to be a fuller expression of your authentic self, your empowered self, and also that you have loved yourself enough to reach for what you need and want. And that's why you're here. And we're so very grateful for you. So grateful. So with that, I think I'm going to say goodbye. And just, I love you all. Please join us again next month. Again, Amy and I will be holding space for you. We'll be talking about grief, and we'll be, we'll be holding a very heart-centered session where you can come and lay your heart down in ours. We'll be here for you. All right. So thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody. So much love. Yeah. I'll let you show yourselves out, but know that we've loved having you here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.